We are saying that beyond that, we have to control, you'll have to pay damages, of course, and that's a reasonable thing to ask. But the other flip side of it is they're not talking about the responsibility of government to then provide security to both the demonstrators and the business owners. Now, that's how you limit rights. That's how you limit the rights of people. Because the moment you're saying that for me to demonstrate, right now the Constitution says I have to notify the police. So how do they want to circumvent that provision of the constitutional notification? They're saying, get consent from the people who are going to be, so they're saying, well, notify us, but where is the consent? So the police are going to provide you with consent forms. And so once you get the consent forms, then you have to go from street to street, from business to business and say, hey, please, which business is going to approve you demonstrating and destroying their property? None. Who is going to allow you to halt business and bring it to a standstill? Nobody's going to do it.
That is where, peaceful demonstrations come in, because we've had demonstrations from, health workers, and they've been going through town. They're always peaceful. Now, that is where the aspect of chaos comes in, throwing stones and all that.
Yeah.
That is why I think you've talked about the damages part. Yeah. That is, fairly reasonable.
Yeah.
For them to be held accountable in terms of if there will be any damages.
Let me tell you, in 2018, when Raila Odinga was swearing himself in at Uhuru Park, police officers didn't stop anybody. Individuals trooped into Uhuru Park. They went in, Raila Odinga did his business, and they left. No property was damaged. You people reported, no property was damaged. In fact, the worst that happened is that TV stations were switched off. That is all that they did. So the only property that was damaged was to the media. But the rest of the country, everyone was peaceful. So there's precedence that when police actually cooperate with citizens, there is actually going to be peaceful demonstrations.
So in short, you're faulting the police for the chaos?
I have always insisted that the only reason why there's chaos is when the police declare a demonstration illegal before it happens. It's definitely not going to be peaceful. There's absolutely no way to be peaceful, because the police have already made up their mind that this demonstration should not, will not, and will never happen. And so in that case, what is going to happen? They're going to lob tear gas to stop the people from accessing grounds, from accessing their leaders. And what will the people do in response? Self-defense. You're throwing tear gas at me. What am I supposed to do? I'm not going to laugh at the tear gas. I'm going to try throw it back at you, right? And so the people are going to try quell the police who are rioting on the streets. And as a result, one person is quelling the other one, and the other one is rioting, and that's how we end up with peace. But as I've said, there's precedents before. When doctors have been going on strike, we've seen people march on the streets, nobody stops them. When civil society organizations march on the streets, nobody stops them. Things happen. On the day of the International Day of the Girl Child, a lot of organizations march on the streets, no property is damaged. So how comes that only when demonstrations are declared illegal, then we have a problem? That's what we have to do, to be realistic and be honest with ourselves, that the only reason why violence ever occurs in any demonstration is because the police decide to do so. Now, of course, there are exceptions. When students decide to go and riot, a lot of times, once being a student, a lot of times you go out with the intention of destroying property. Now, those are exceptions to the rule. It's not the norm. Those are exceptions to the rule. But I think what they're trying to do is give legislation. And it's proper that if Article 237 provides for the right to picket, how do you provide an enabling legislation that sort of gives order in what is the manner of giving notice, for instance? We don't know the manner in which, what's the prescribed manner? Do we write? Do I come and speak to the inspector of police? Do I go to the OCS? Do I write a letter? Is there a form? So there's need to actually give enabling legislation just so that there's a lot of clarity around what's the time period to give notice. Is it a week? Is it a day? Is it an hour? Such things are actually understandable. And I think that there's a place for that legislation. But there are things in that legislation that are short-term. And whoever proposing those legislation, they're not thinking about tomorrow. They're not thinking about themselves one day being in opposition or whatever. They are behaving the same way Jubilee members of parliament were behaving the other day when James Orengo told them in the Senate that this government will punish you more than it will punish me. And it did punish them more than it punished James Orengo. Short-term thinking, short-term gains. When leaders fail to think beyond their current situations, when they fail to think about the next generation, when they fail to think about the longevity of the laws that they are making, then a lot of times we end up with short-term laws that are neither here nor there, that are serving very selfish interests and that are meant to deal with very specific situations. Instead of thinking about if in 10, 20 years, this country is in the hands of an autocrat or it's in the hands of a dictator, will that law serve all Kenyans? If in a few years' time this country goes into chaos, will that law serve all the interests of Kenyans? And the answer is a resounding no. So I think it's a short-term thinking and a short-term fix.
And of course, like you say, the main role of the police in such occasions is to provide security. And security not only to those who might be affected by the demonstrations, but as well those who are demonstrating. That is enshrined in the Constitution.